Welcome to Spoken Sins, where if you give us 15 minutes, we'll show you a creator's soul. I am Mr. Anderson, the voice of WrittenSins.com, and today on the show we are ecstatic to be joined by
Austin Allen Hamblin.
So what's going on, Austin? What's new? I know you just had that hugely successful Kickstarter, Steel Wool. What's going on beyond Steel Wool? How's that coming along, getting it out? And are there any other projects on the horizon?
Well, with Steel Wool, things are going really good. I think he's got maybe 3 or 4 pages left to be drawn, and then he's going to go on to coloring them. It's kind of cool the way that he's doing them is that he is drawing the pages digitally, printing them out, and then watercoloring them, which is kind of a weird mixed media thing that I haven't seen a lot or that I know of, but it definitely gives it a really cool look. So we'll get that done. Get that sent out to the to our backers, which you are one. I appreciate that a lot. And then we're going to move on to working on the second one. I've been working on outlining the second issue, and then we'll kind of go from there with that. I'm excited to do stuff with that. It's not like the normal stuff that I do. It's actually got a serious tone with bits of humor instead.
I thought it was a great story. I don't think enough people take women as seriously as you're about to take them, and I really commend you for it because you're doing it in this way that I've never seen anyone have, honestly, the balls to do it. I mean, we just saw Fox cancel the first show with a female pitcher, so this is a big moment to actually have a female step up and play that role. So kudos on that. How did you guys come up with that idea?
Well, we were we're working on something else originally when I had met him, and we got talking about like he's married and I have a girlfriend, and we started talking about him, and we started realizing that like his wife and my girlfriend have a lot in common. Kind of this they're strong women, have this snarkiness about them, and then we kind of talked like like that's what we're attracted to, and then we started getting talking how female characters were used in all forms of media, not just comics, television shows, movies, etc., and even pro wrestling, for example. And then he was like, let's do a book, kind of centered around that theme. And then through kind of just BS sessions of like kicking around the ball, the ideas back and forth, we kind of came up with this. And I was like, this isn't my normal thing, but I really felt the want to do it and to be a part of it, because some of my when a female character is done right, it's awesome. Like I think of like Saga, and some of them, not even just the main characters, but minor characters in Saga are awesome. The Will sister, oh man, trying to think what the main girl in there's name is, but like they just speak to me and I appreciate it a lot. So I'm kind of hoping we can come across some people, and a lot of people, everybody's been like super supportive of it. Everyone's like, yeah. And the kind of the nice thing about indie comics, it's a double-edged sword where it's like, I'm not making any money and I'm not getting paid, so why wouldn't I just do what I want to do?
Oh, absolutely. And I say it all the time, and I said it recently. Marvel's complaining about diversity, blaming they're trying to do diversity on their bad sales for the last year. And I said it. It's not that you're trying to do diversity. It's you're not doing diversity. You're just changing around your characters. You're not looking for new powerful characters. Like, I mean, you go into the indie environment, look what you're creating. Right there, you just created a character that could easily slide into the Marvel universe and could make diversity a real thing.
I agree so much with that, because so the Miss Marvel that I don't know what is it, past 2 or 3 years that they've been doing, I loved that, and that was a brand. I mean, it's Miss Marvel, but it's a brand new character. I think of what it is with most people is this is how we'll just take a character, let's say Wolverine. This is how I've always known Wolverine. Why would you change it and change everything about him? People get upset about that. They'll be like, why would I want to read that? That's not Wolverine. I like Wolverine. I don't like whatever this is. So why not create a new character, that it would work with? So, I mean, I agree with you there, 100%.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, Marvel's gotten to the point now where they're rebooting again later this year now. apparently, and they've actually gotten to the point where everyone now knows the time schedule. Oh, it's going to be the fall. There must be a new Marvel Universe coming. It's like they're not getting it. They're not getting that they have to. It's stories, and I think the best time Marvel has ever put out stories is usually when they're the underdog, when they're in trouble, when they're not making money, and they suddenly start telling better stories. And I think when their cash flow is a little too high, they don't care about telling stories as much. And I don't blame the creators. I'm sure you feel this way like I do. I don't blame the creators doing it. I blame the management behind them.
No, absolutely. I mean, as an indie guy, like if right now, if DC called me and they said, "We want you to write Blue Beetle, but here's what we want," I'm gonna write it. You know, it's just like you got to look at it from they need to pay the bills. You know, if you're a creator wherever and that's how you pay your bills, they're basically if your boss said, "Hey, if you need to either sweep the floor this way, we're gonna find somebody else to sweep the floor, and you need to sweep the floor so that you can get paid, so that you can keep your house." What are they just gonna say no? I mean, Mark Miller kind of did that. You know, he kind of was just like, "Oh, I'm done with you, Marvel and DC. I'm gonna do my own stuff." But that's the exception to every rule. That guy supersedes that with all of his movie stuff, and he's just such a great storyteller in general.
Well, let's not forget Mark Miller did work for the comic book industry at one point. And I think that that's the two honest things that every creator has to deal with. One, you want to get hired by Marvel and DC. And once you're hired by Marvel and DC, you have to understand you're going to be fired. Everyone gets fired at one point from Marvel and DC. So while you're there, it's really just about building a name recognition to take it out later somewhere else or move to DC or do something like that. No one stays on the title forever.
Oh, absolutely. And look at how many creators now, and even some who still do stuff at Marvel, but will be doing books at Image. You know, I'm thinking of like Jason Aaron. Like he's still doing stuff at Marvel, but like he's doing Southern Bastards. He did Scalped in the past, you know, or you get creators from DC go and do a Vertigo book. So like Jeff Lemire is one that I think of. I'm a huge Jeff Lemire fan. Now he writes, you know, stuff for Marvel and DC, but like his stuff for Valiant, his stuff for Oni, his stuff for Dark Horse. I mean, that's the stuff that I like. Ooh, just gets me excited.
Well, I definitely think that Dark Horse and Image are definitely tearing up grounds, but I got to give credit to DC. I mean, I think they listen to the fans a little bit more, and there's a little more promise on the horizon with them.
I agree a lot. It seems like they're willing. I mean, with the New 52, after that is really when it seemed like they started to listen a lot more. You know, that at first they did the New 52, and it was like, oh wow, you know, our sales are great. Awesome, things are going good. And then I don't know if it was like after like 6 months or 7 months, then they just slowly started declining. But, you know, with the bringing back of the old universe, you know, and Rebirth and all that, it brought back a lot of readers that were otherwise frustrated with the stories they were getting.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And speaking of stories, before we went on air, I'd heard that there's going to be a new story you're going to be telling with an older character. Can you fill us in what's going on with Punk and Rock?
Yeah, so Punk and Rock, we, you know, got our first volume out, which is 5 issues. They were originally released in black and white. We got them out in full color, and we're going to be doing more. We already have a short backup story that's ready to go for issue 6, and I'll still be working with Scott Twells, the awesome illustrator of the book. And this time it's going to be a little different. The first 5 issues were all self-contained stories that you could literally read in any order that weren't like tied to each other. With this one, there is going to be some continuity of the end of this 6th issue leads into the 7th, and you know, you'll have to know what happened in the 7th to do that. And we're working on that stuff right now. I'm really excited. I really have fun working with those characters because it's just wacky and anything can happen. And it's a comic that they know they're in a comic and they don't take themselves too seriously. So you just can kind of have fun with it.
Well, now, how is that as a writer? Because you're a writer. How is it to pivot from something that's just fun and you're having a lot of fun with to suddenly taking on a little more serious topics when it comes to Steel Wool? Did you like seek out advice from other maybe muses? Did you talk to maybe your girlfriend a little bit? Like, how would you handle that? Because I know with Fetish Babies, I had to get my wife involved to give it that soul I needed for the comic book. She's the reason it's got the heart it does, to her credit. Did you have trouble with the transition and dealing with maybe a female's perspective?
Absolutely. I was terrified, to be honest. I was absolutely terrified to write a female character. When I started working on the book, I wrote, we'll just say the first 5 pages, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. And one of my friends said to me, he goes, what do you know about being a teenage girl? And it's true. It's like, I have never been a teenage girl, nor will ever be a teenage girl. But then I started thinking, I'm like, I write a comic about a fucking rock monster. If I can get inside the head of a rock monster character or any of the other wacky stuff that I've written, things that don't exist, I can get in that mindset. So I started thinking about comics with strong female leads and movies, and just paying attention. And I've always been that kind of person that I want to understand things. I don't necessarily argue with people. If we're having a disagreement, I want to see why you think that way. And like, oh, why do you think that? What is your reasoning behind this? So kind of doing that and just thinking of different people I'd known. And I grew up with I have 2 older sisters. So thinking about stuff like that, it definitely helped. And then once I started getting in there, I'm like, okay, yeah. And then it just for some reason, after that just kind of all clicked. And I mean, it's a lot of different mindsets to do something serious like this, but I had so much fun doing it. So it was like a really nice change of pace.
I personally love the idea behind it because, as not just a brother and a husband, but as an uncle to a younger niece, I definitely want there to be content that she can relate to. So I'm very happy that creators like you are embracing that.
I appreciate that. I myself have 3 nieces. I don't have any nephews, and that was one thing too. And I have to do things in print. I'm a print guy, so I've got a lot of the books and comics, and I just always think like, what would they like to read? And obviously the punk and rock stuff they won't be able to read until they get quite a bit older. But something like this, I'm like, yeah. And then I started thinking of role models, and kind of a weird thing. Like as a kid, I was like, who did I look up to? Whatever. And like, I looked up to the X-Men. I looked up to some good guy pro wrestlers. And then I'm like, who do little girls have now? And my niece got a Harley Quinn costume, and I thought, man, and Harley, and some comic conventions I've been to, a lot of girls that are like under the age of 10 dressing up like Harley Quinn, and I'm like, as like the movie version of the Suicide Squad, and I'm like, that is not the role model that young ladies should be having. And I would just think like, what if my nieces they looked up to that, and it's you kind of don't want it to happen. I know it's kind of a weird way to think, but then once having nieces, it really did kind of change the way I think about things.
No, I don't think that's weird at all. I think that's parenting gone wrong when I see their kids dressed up like that. Because as adults, we have to understand, well, you can't dress like that because you're not old enough, but I can get you this Harley Quinn costume and you can wear that. I think that's just a society thing. I don't think my dad would have ever let my sister out of the house looking like Harley Quinn at any age.
Well, hey, and I'll admit the Harley Quinn with the I don't know what you want to call it, like with the jingle hat,
The jingle hats, yeah.
and the jumpsuit, like that one for me was crush. That was the one I grew up on, and Dr. J, that one, jeez, it kills me.
Well, speaking of comics and the influence, and obviously, I mean, Harley Quinn, she came from a cartoon series. There's something that's out of the box thinking. When it comes to out of box thinking, you go to the indie market. What are you a fan of currently in the indie comic industry?
Ooh, indie comics. Okay, so I like indie comics a lot. I'm not just an indie creator. I'm an indie reader. So I read a lot of books from publishers like Image. Aftershock Comics has really become one of my favorite publishers. And I do a lot of Kickstarters, like Morgan's Organs, which I know is something that you have featured on your website. I love that comic. Just so great, so great. Let's see it, Aftershock, Blood Blister, Insects. I think it's called Black Eyed Kids. There we go. That Joe Pruitt does. Yeah, right there. Are just books that I love. It's cool, especially Aftershock. You've got a bunch of top name creators just doing these weird kind of stories, and not that I don't like superhero or mainstream stuff. No, it's not that at all. It's just I like weird shit. That's the kind of stuff I do. Spread at Image is another one that I absolutely love. God Hates Astronauts, which the creator of that actually did do a pinup for the Punk and Rock graphic novel. Kill Them All by Kyle Starks, who is currently writing Rick and Morty. That's another one. There's so many.
Well, I mean, Morgan's Organs is just, I mean, he just successfully launched the second issue, but
I thought that too.
I was shocked at the quality of that. That was definitely one of those things when you read it, you know you're reading the future. Somewhere, somehow, that's going to be a comic book one day that people are going to talk about being, oh, did you read it back in the day?
Oh, yeah. No, I saw when they did their first Kickstarter, they had, I don't know, they like 4 or 5 page preview. And I was like, oh, this looks cool. And it was like $8 to get a copy. I'm like, yeah, I'll check it out. And I got it. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I told my girlfriend, like, you need to read this. And she read it, and she thought it was funny. And then, so the second one came around. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna back that. Like, and I've got another one coming in the mail soon. It's called The Talking Bread, which is about this guy who buys a loaf of bread, and there's 24 pieces of self-aware bread. So just a weird one. Drive, that's one I just got, and I've been digging into, and I'm really enjoying it. Just kind of a space adventure with a lot of witty humor in it.
You know who does good stuff like that? Like, I mean, it's not as much as humorful, but it's laced in there. Bob Sally with the Salvagers and the way that he's cross-marketed with Jasper's Tavern worked really well in that. You know, he took this very serious comic, and then he had a sideshow with it that was very interesting in it. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay, that's cool. I'm not familiar with that, but like that's cool. Just like something else, or like going on somewhere else in the same universe, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like the character who's a very big deal that he made a puppet of, an actual puppet, and he's a giant wrench. I mean, this guy is just ahead of the game. I'm watching him taking notes, and he made a comic that was Jasper's Diner, and I mean Tavern or Diner, I forgot which one. But I remember it being like an origin story, and I was like, that is so clever. You know what I mean? And you see that in indie comics in a way that, like, I think, like you said, we're inspired to do something different because we can. We're losing. You start off losing.
Yeah,
so if you're already losing, you do anything.
Absolutely. If you know your book's not going to sell, why not try something weird that might? Or you never know. Like that's, like, and it's funny because there's always people like, okay, the one thing that bugs me is there's some artists that will just constantly do sample pages for Marvel and DC, and there's nothing wrong with sample pages, but when you do it to the amount where you could have had 2 or 3 graphic novels worth, why wouldn't you just make your own comic? You got portfolio pages, and you have a comic that you did. So that never quite clicked in my brain why you would do something like that.
Oh, I completely agree. And I have this argument with some artists who, like, I'll try to help on writtensins.com, and I'll be like, well, what have you done so far? And like, here comes the fan art. You know what I mean? This is all my fan art. This is all I did. And I was like, but where's your stuff? Like, where's something you committed yourself to? So that's an interesting question for you to answer with us. Like, how did you get to your creative team? How did you bring together the people who brought both Steel Wool and the Rock and Punk series to life?
Well, okay, so when I started, so I'm 22 years old, so I'm a pretty young guy. That makes me sound weird, but when I started making comics, I was 16 and 17, and basically at that age, no one would take me seriously. So I posted an ad on Digital Webbing. An artist responded, and I started talking to work with them. And I was doing a book of shorts for my first thing. And then I said, hey, do you know anybody else? Because I want some different styles. And he sent me to Scott 12, who I've worked with till this day. Now, Johannes Vick was one for Steel Wool that I can't remember how I added him. I'll add creators like if I see like they get tagged in some of their artwork and I like it, and I'll be like, hey, I want people to know that I like their stuff if I do, because you never know. It's hard doing this stuff. So just somebody else being like, dude, I enjoy what you're doing good, can be a big help. And usually I'll be like, hey, if you're interested, I can send you some of the comics that I do. So he was one that I was like, yeah, I really dig your stuff. I was like, can I send you my stuff? And he's like, sure. I sent it to him, and he's like, oh, I really like this. Do you have any more of Punk and Rock? And I'm like, yeah, I got 4 more issues. And I sent them to him, and we just stayed in touch here and there. And then we were talking about something. And he goes, you know what? We should do a book together. And that was how it all started. I never try to be forward with someone. I just was like, no, I like your stuff, and and I think what helps too is once you get a certain amount of things out, like me dating back to 2012, I consistently got comics out. It shows that I'll actually follow through with it, because doing indie comics, there's so many people that will flake on you, disappear or take your money and run, or collaborate and not just do the work. I mean, it happens all the time. Yeah, and so it's kind of a nice thing to have.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, and everyone was like, well, why would, because for me, they were like, why would you pick Fetish Babies as your coming out title? And I remember being like, actually, I never planned it that way. It just happened to be that way. There's an anthology that I have that's stuck in production hell. I'm waiting for that, still waiting for that to show up. But like you said, sometimes you just get artists that flake on you, which always makes me interested why artists are so eager to not work with writers. It's like, if you want to prove yourself, work with a writer. We all talk to each other. And that's really something no one realizes. In the background, I talk with a lot of writers, and they tell me who to work with. I now have a list of 20 people I know to work with, but I've also got the list of people not to work with. So that's definitely something I would advise creators and artists to do. But as far as it goes with all your creations and what's been going on with you, will we see a Kickstarter for the upcoming Punk and Rock?
Well, I'm probably probably what we'll do, I'll do like what I did with the first one. So we'll get enough to collect it into a trade, and then to collect it into the trade, which will have a lot of bonus material. Like the first trade we did had a bunch of pinups by the creator. We had tech stories in the back. We had pinups by professionals, bonus comics that were never before seen. Like we wanted to make it like some extra. That's what we'll do for that. We'll when we get 5 or 6 issues, depending on how the story arc is, we'll do a Kickstarter for the Adventures of Punk and Rock Volume 2. So,
well, that's awesome. Well, we're on our way out. We're as usual over our time limit. It was great having you on. I've been covering. We've known each other for a year now, so this was one of those interviews I couldn't wait to have, because I would feel so comfortable. I knew how to talk and what we could talk about. I want you on again, of course, when something new comes out. But on the way out, we've talked a lot about Steel Wool. We've talked a lot about the Adventures of Punk and Rock. But assuming that we're doing our job right and we're getting you new fans looking at you, why don't you give us the elevator pitch for both of the comic books?
The Adventures of Punk and Rock follows the 2 title characters, Punk and Little Rock, 2 screw-up bounty hunters in space who'll do anything for money. But the third main character is the narrator, who not only narrates the comic, but interacts with you, the reader, and Punk and Rock. He only narrates the comic because he needs to pay alimony to his ex-wife, with whom he has 27 children. And Steel Wool follows high school sophomore Allie Skyeater, who just happens to be the varsity star running back, who somehow gets superpowers, and having to deal with the superpowers and her father constantly being away in the military. Kind of some interesting things ensue.
And now, will you be going to any cons this coming con season as it starts to get in a high gear?
Yeah, this weekend I'll be rolling around at C2E2. Next weekend I'll be at Planet Comic Con in Kansas City, and then I will be doing just a bunch of smaller cons around the Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota area. So I usually do a ton.
All right. Well, it's great having you on the program. I can't wait to have you back on. I definitely want to hear about what happens at C2E2. That always sounds so interesting. I'm always envious that I never got around to it. So I'm going to try to go there next year.
Hey, I'll be making a vlog this weekend with my girlfriend, so sometime next week everybody can see what it's kind of like. So,
Oh, that would be awesome. We look forward to it. Thank you for being on the show tonight.
oh, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, guys. We'll see you at the next Spoken SiNS.